What is a man to you? To the ancient world, the greatest example of a man by far was Heracles. He is depicted from the Atlantic coast all the way to the mountains of Iran. And his signature attributes will be a lion skin, some apples, a big club, and a small peepee. This will be important later. And I think Heracles, or Hercules for you Romans out there, is relevant today, right? There's a big discussion about what a man is. And that's arguably the thing that Charlie Kirk talked about the most. Now, I'm happy to be wrong. I didn't watch his show, but my understanding is his was more a biological feature, right? XY chromosomes. Here are my thoughts on that. Plato is where we get most of our material for Socrates from. And in the world of philosophy, he's kind of the authority. And back in the day, he tried to tackle a question: how do you define a man, or what is a man? And the definition he settled on was featherless biped. Now, everybody thought this was pretty clever, and he was applauded for it up until Diogenes showed up. Diogenes the Cynic is the original Cynic. And when he heard Plato's definition of a man being a featherless biped, he basically went, "Oh, really?" So he went out, grabbed the chicken, plucked its feathers, crashed Plato's academy, and said, "Here is Plato's man." And I love this for two reasons. The first one is that Plato is the authority, and authority figures really like to make statements that people just take as fact. I encourage you to challenge and test statements made by authority, whomever that might be, to see if it's true or not. What makes a man? Featherless biped? XY chromosomes? Oh, really? Okay, here's your man. The second thing I like about this is the message that Diogenes is really sending. Being a man has less to do about biology and a lot more to do about behavior and character. There are many males who are not men. Heracles is not a man because of his pee-pee. I told you this would be important. He is a man because of the choices he makes, because choice makes character, and character is destiny. Outside of Plato, most of our source material for Socrates comes from Xenophon. In his book Memorabilia, he has Socrates tell the story of a young Heracles and how he came to be through his choice. He is considering whether he should go down the path of virtue or vice. Vice tries to entice him, saying that if you befriend me, I will lead you to the most pleasant and easiest roads. You will live your life without experience of the hard things. Think of how similar this is in everything in our culture, right? From entertainment to the economy, everything is designed to make things easy and convenient for you. And I'm going to suggest it's not healthy for you, whether physically, spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually. It is not a road that offers any kind of growth, and therefore it can't offer any true happiness. It's Seneca who says that no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. What does virtue offer? A difficult road, but the only one worth taking. She says, without labor and attentiveness, the gods give humans none of the things that are good and noble. She gives a whole list of what this road entails, but there are three things that stand out to me. First, she says, if you want to be cherished by your friends, you must do good deeds to your friends. If you desire to be honored by some city, you must benefit the city. And if you think you deserve to be admired by all of Greece for your virtue, then you must attempt to be the cause of good for Greece. The virtuous man is the kind of man who works for the betterment of all of mankind. Virtue goes on. If you wish to be powerful also in your body, you must accustom your body to serve your judgment, and you must train with labors and sweat. While I maintain that being a man is not simply a matter of biology, there is a physical component to it. Later in Xenophon's book, he has Socrates chastise a young guy for being in poor physical condition. Socrates says, it is shameful due to neglect And I want to emphasize on this. Neglect is a choice. There are a lot of people whose bodies do not give them a choice, right? But he says, it is shameful due to neglect to grow old before seeing the beauty and strength one's body is capable of. He says, for those who maintain their bodies well are both healthy and strong. They can bring aid to their friends and do good deeds for their country. For this, they are deemed worthy of gratitude. Now consider this, the virtuous man is not strong for his own sake, but for the sake of others. And finally, virtue tells Heracles, if you set out to increase yourself through war, to be able to save your friends and subdue your foes, you must learn the warlike arts from those who understand them, and you must practice how one must use them. And while this is true about war, and we'll talk about that later, I think it's fair to say this is true in every aspect of life. If you want to learn anything, you have to learn from those who understand them and you have to practice. This is true for a job. This is true for physical training. This is true for relationships. And it is certainly true for character building. It is a long, arduous road to become Heracles, and there are no shortcuts. And this applies to becoming a man and a man of virtue, especially. For the Stoics, this means making choices that are guided by and resulting in courage, justice, temperance, or you can say balance and self control, and wisdom. These character traits are only exercised in the face of adversity. What kind of man, asks Epictetus, do you suppose Heracles would have become if it hadn't been for the famous lion, the hydra, and the brutal men he drove away? He never would have become a Heracles. He goes on, and what good would have been the use of his arms and all his strength, his endurance, his nobility of mind, if such circumstances and opportunities hadn't been there to rouse and exercise him? He says these challenges, these labors, these difficulties, they served a useful purpose in revealing and exercising Heracles. It's in the same spirit that Epictetus later on says, difficulties reveal what men amount to. So when you are struck by difficulty, remember that God, like a trainer, has matched you with a tough sparring partner. For what purpose? So that you may become an Olympic victor. And this cannot be achieved without sweat. In an earlier passage, Epictetus says, suppose I were talking to an athlete and said, show me your shoulders. And he replied with, look at my dumbbells. He would say, away with you and your dumbbells. I want to see what you've achieved with them. And I think this is a great analogy in life, how people will use external things. And that can be dumbbells. It can be a fancy car, a job title, a diploma. It can even be a pair of shoulders, right? To showcase progress. But those things don't relate to progress as a man, let alone a man of virtue. So what does? There are a lot of correct answers and examples, but here are two from the Emperor Marcus Aurelius that I really like. The first one, he says, the loss of temper is no sign of manliness. There is more virility and humanity in the one who shows himself gentle. And I think today in our culture, there's this misguided notion that to be a man, one has to be pissed off all the time. And I see that, whether it's at the gym or in the streets or online, right? There's this idea that a man has to be aggressive. Um, but virility, that's masculinity, right? And humanity. I find that very interesting how he makes a distinction. There are a lot of guys who do not act like men, and then there are some guys who do not even act like humans, right? There's a certain security in gentleness. Ask any woman, ask any child, right? There's a safety behind a man who is gentle. But being gentle doesn't mean being soft. The next thing he says is resolve firmly, like a Roman and a man, to do what comes to hand with dignity, humanity, independence, and justice. There are real problems that need to be fixed, right? There are injustices that need to be made right. But the man of virtue owes it to himself to do it in a way that keeps his dignity and humanity. This is a bust of Commodus. And it kills me to say it, but he was the son of Marcus Aurelius. While it said that Caesar Augustus, Rome's first emperor, found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble, Commodus is said to have taken a kingdom of gold and left it a kingdom of iron and rust. Soon after his father's death, he would give up on the gains achieved during the war, sue for peace, go back to Rome, and pretend to be a gladiator or a warrior in the Colosseum. He had no interest in doing the hard things like actually winning the war or governing, but instead of appearing and identifying himself as Hercules, like he even took on the name, and you see him here portrayed with the lion skin, the club, and the apples. To me, the man who by far the most resembles this character today is Pete Hegseth. If you don't know who he is, Pete Hegseth was a Fox News television host and is Donald Trump's latest choice for Secretary of Defense. He has since rebranded himself as the Secretary of War. Trump's first choice for Secretary of Defense was James Mattis, who said, "The first thing is competence. You must be brilliant in the basics. You cannot dabble in your job, but you must master it." Besides being good advice in general, this is also very similar to what virtue tells Heracles. If you set out to increase through war, to be able to save your friends and subdue your foes, you must learn the warlike arts from those who understand them, and you must practice them. Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War, says that the highest form of warfare is to attack strategy itself, the next to attack alliances, and that the lowest form of war is to attack cities. This is pretty basic stuff. And yet, Hegseth has no interest in countering the strategies of our adversaries like the Russians and the Chinese, but is more interested in waging war on woke. It seems like we are doing everything in our power to dismantle our own alliances, and we are deploying our American troops in our American cities. And here he is, putting on a show, pretending to be Patton, and talking down to generals the way that Diogenes would about standards, while at the same time he is unwilling or unable to do basic pull-ups and push-ups. So that's brilliant. Now here's the thing. There are plenty of people like Commodus out there. There's always going to be someone who wants to look like Heracles without having to do the work of one, right? Everybody wants that lion skin. Everybody wants a big club. Everybody wants those plump, juicy apples. But very few people are willing to do the heavy lifting required to get them. Do your deadlifts. And I would say even fewer people want that small peepee. It represents man's ability to control his body and passions. It's what separates him from the animals. I told you this would be important. Epictetus says athletes first choose what kind of athlete they want to be and then train and act accordingly. So too, you must choose what kind of person you want to be and act in all that you do in that way. He goes on, I must act as a human being. What does that involve? That one shouldn't act like a sheep, even if one is gentle in one's behavior, and one shouldn't act injuriously like a wild beast. This relates to each person's choice. So what can you do? Like all of us, we all get to choose every day who we want to be, right? And choosing the person of virtue does not belong only to males. This is something that everyone can and should strive for, regardless of gender. And with that, I'll leave you with two final quotes. The first from Epictetus. He says, finally decide that you are an adult who is going to devote the rest of your life to making progress. And realize that the Olympics have started. The chance of progress, to keep or to lose, turns on the event of a single day. Do something today that is difficult. Do something today that is virtuous. Go to the gym today. And the last one from Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one.